What's up, everybody? Matt Parrino, Ryan Talbot inside Highmark Stadium, where the Buffalo Bills just improved to 6-1 on the season in a little bit of a strange game. I think as we kind of go through this and talk through, what actually happened in this game, it was a tale of two halves, and it was one where I just felt like that the Packers never really had a chance in this game, and it kind of played out that way. Some weird, spooky things happening in the second half, which I feel like is fitting. Now it is Halloween.
It is Halloween.
Speaking of Halloween, a lot of people are going to be hitting the jackpot today. Every kind of candy you can get, but which, by the way, we have to cover this before we do anything else. What's your favorite kind of candy?
Kit Kat. Big Kit Kat guy.
All right. I don't hate that at all. I love Kit Kats. I was making the argument for Twix. I think it's like a mood thing. Like I kind of go like up and down, up and down, up and down. Right now I'm in a Twix phase, and I think that's okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
But you could enter for a chance to win $1 million with Topps right now. Each week, King's Hawaiian is pitting two city sliders against each other in the ultimate showdown, and you get to help decide the winner. Vote weekly for your favorite regional slider for a chance to win all season long and earn entries towards the $1 million prize. Explore the interactive stadium to play games, get receipts, recipes, share photos, and more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone to enter. So I guess the best place to start in this game was the strange second half. I felt like there was two big narratives that came out of that. Number one, Bill struggling to stop the run. And number two, kind of like I joked about it down before we went into the locker room. Josh Allen's been watching all those old movies on the Kyle Brandt podcast. I wonder if he watched Hot Tub Time Machine this week, because it felt like 2019, maybe Josh Allen in that second half. Just some struggles on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, let's start with the run game. The Bills let up 197 yards rushing to the top two backs, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Obviously, the Packers went over 200 yards when you threw in Aaron Rodgers' scramble and run. So it was very uncharacteristic of the Bills, and it's something they're going to have to clean up for the game against the Jets next week and the rest of the season. But at the same time, I thought Von Miller said something really interesting in the postgame. He said, I just kept expecting in the second half, when are you going to start passing the ball? And that probably did create some of those run lanes for the Packers in this matchup, Matt, because they're up 17 at the half, the Bills. Packers come out, long drive, field goal. Bills come out, match field goal. They're on still 17 points. Packers next drive, I think 7 straight runs, and it ends with a turnover and downs with 2 other consecutive runs. Now you're in the fourth quarter. 3 drives, and all of a sudden the third quarter is just gone. And the Bills are in the same spot. So while they gave up a lot of yards on the ground, it really didn't hurt them tonight. Mm-hmm. And while it's not something they want to repeat going forward, I'm going to kind of overlook that for now, because I think a lot of them were pinning their ears back saying, this is Aaron Rodgers. This is a first ballot Hall of Famer. They're going to start throwing the ball all over the place. And it created those run lanes. As for Allen, very uncharacteristic performance, missing receivers, throwing high, throwing interceptions. It wasn't what we have come to expect. And, we've been saying this is the MVP favorite. This is a guy that's been dominating thus far. It was not a very good game for him when you go back and look at the stat sheet and look how he played in the second half.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go back. We'll talk about Allen in a few moments, but I want to get back into the run defense, because I saw people panicking, right? Like, Sean McDermott was asked a couple times in the post-game press conference if this is something moving forward, looking forward, if this is going to be something they want to get figured out, because you go back to last year, that's kind of where this team struggled at times, especially like you think of the Colts, you think of the Tennessee Titans. Those were games where they ran the ball really well against them. I don't think this is the same thing, though, because to your point, what do the Bills not want to do against Aaron Rodgers? Give up explosive plays. That's the number one priority for them. And if you go back and watch that one play where Aaron Rodgers found Romeo Doubs for that touchdown, it was a dime. The Bills had good pressure on that play. And I think it was just about, okay, we're going to let you nickel and dime us, try to kill us with 1,000 paper cuts down the field. Because at the end of the day, even with the success they were having, I think they were running at eight-ish yards per clip, even in the first half. It didn't lead to touchdowns in the end on the scoreboard. And so I think the Bills were like, all right, offensively, we're moving the ball, we're scoring. We put up 21 points or 24 points in the first half. we're in a good spot. If you want to run, it was almost like, I think Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier are probably like, good, go ahead, do that, because you're kind of just running yourself out of time, which is what ended up happening anyway. And I know that the Bills kind of, at the end of the game, there was a couple moments where they scored that one touchdown. Maybe you had a thought, if you're a Green Bay fan or even the Packers themselves, oh, maybe they can get back into this. And it never really felt like that to me. Like, even with the Bills struggling in that department, like the Packers ever had a puncher's chance to get back in it.
No, even in the press box, I thought that the general mood when the Packers scored that touchdown to close the gap to 10 was, well, that's nice, but it's, much ado about nothing. It's too late. There's only about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You knew the Bills were probably going to be able to put together a drive and not really give Green Bay much of a chance after that point. And sure enough, that's kind of how it unfolded. So, they scored, they closed the gap a little bit, but it was never really a game where I think anyone felt like the result was going to be in question.
Mm-hmm. If you're watching on YouTube right now, thank you so much. Staying up late with us, Ryan Talbot. In Highmark Stadium, people are punching away at their keyboards, getting their stories out. We want to get live a little earlier than this, but of course we have some stories to get done as well. Head over to Syracuse.com, NewYorkUpstate.com. We have you covered all week, as now we lead up to a pretty big AFC East game between the Bills and the Jets, who have their own quarterback problems. And so I know we're going to talk about, the second half Josh Allen, these 2 interceptions that were bad. But listen, man, I watched most of that Jets-Patriots game, and both of those teams have real bad quarterback problems. But I think the Jets were, for a team that really has a lot of things going defensively, they have a real problem at quarterback. Somebody that they just spent a first-round draft pick on, a number 2 overall pick on, and now the New York City fan base wants a change at the quarterback position. So things are not going well for them. And going into this weekend, there were people talking about them. Are they entering contender status? As crazy as that is to sound.
Yeah, it speaks to the talent of their defense. Their defense is legit. There's no arguing that. It's a very good unit. But the defense can only do so much when the offense can't move the ball and they're having 3 and outs and they're not sustaining drives. Defenses get tired. It doesn't matter how good you are. So you saw a little bit of that today. But the problem with the Jets is Zach Wilson does not appear to be that guy. He put together, he had 1 or 2 really good throws in the first half of that game, and I check social media as I'm watching, and it's hey, he's going to be okay. He's throwing it really well. And then you saw some of those horrific interceptions, right, Matt, where he was trying to throw them away, and he just didn't throw it out of bounds, and he just gave the Patriots the ball back, essentially. Could have just handed them the ball at the end of the day. That's how bad those interceptions were. So going into this matchup, the Bills are going to want to clean up a lot of what they did wrong, but I also feel pretty comfortable in them. The fan base should feel very confident in this Bills game because what we've seen from Zach Wilson isn't very inspiring. They lost their best offensive weapon, one of their best offensive linemen, both of those injuries last week, mind you. So I think this matchup should go fairly well for the Bills.
Mm-hmm. With Allen, looking at that second half, I can't remember who we were talking about it with, but I think what happened was the chippy nature of this game, I think, kind of fed into how the Bills were trying to attack the Packers. And you saw it from the jump. And obviously we have a couple stories up at the site right now about the Stefon Diggs, Jaire Alexander beef that started in the tunnel pregame, and then it really just marinated over the course of the game, and then it really started to cook by the time the game ended, and it flowed over into the locker room. Talking to Stefon Diggs at the podium, he was quick to say, I don't know what started it. I had some expletives to say, but I finished it. And then I went over to the Packers locker room, and I wanted to talk to Jaire Alexander. I mean, those are the kind of matchups that you kind of you really like to get both sides of it, right? Like you think back to the Jalen Ramseys of the world where, obviously he had some words for Josh Allen his rookie year. So you try to get into the locker room, get their kind of side of it. And Alexander he views this as a completely different thing. Now, first of all, Alexander and Diggs didn't go up against each other very often. I think it was only 3 plays in the game where they were considered in one-on-one coverage against each other. So it's kind of like a moot point. For as much as they talked trash with each other, they didn't really play against each other that much. But Diggs overall had a great game today, 101 yards, a huge touchdown. He has absolutely roasted the Green Bay Packers. This is his 8th straight game with a touchdown reception against the Packers. He's played now 5 games in his career with Jaire Alexander on the other side. He's got 6 touchdowns in those 5 games. So Stefon Diggs has made it a career out of cooking. I don't want to just say Jaire Alexander because I don't know how much he was actually covering him, but in that secondary with Jaire Alexander as a part of it, Diggs had a lot of success. And I think because of the chippy nature, they were going back and forth. They were talking a lot of trash. The Bills wanted to keep going at them. It was kind of like a mentality. And I think Josh Allen put the ball in jeopardy a little bit too much because he got maybe a little bit dialed up too much in that part of the game.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. He was, trusting his arm a little bit too much at times, making some throws that he shouldn't have been making. You're right. It kind of reminded you of the 2019 version of Josh that you mentioned earlier in the show. They were uncharacteristic, but how much of it was, we really want to put this team away because of how chippy it's been. And speaking of the Jaire Alexander conversation, it's interesting, and it's never up to the player, but if you have a true number one corner, and I think Alexander is a true number one corner, why aren't you having them follow the team's top wide receiver? Josh Allen said earlier this week he was expecting that. It didn't really happen.
Right.
Earlier this season, Justin Jefferson had a huge game against the Packers. And again, he didn't follow Jefferson. So if this has been a problem before and you have Stefon Diggs going over 100 yards, scoring a touchdown, why aren't you making those matchups? So that kind of falls on the coaching staff in this regime a little bit to not trust that your best guys are going to be put in the positions to make plays against the other team's best players.
As far as Alexander Allen, extrapolating this out, moving on into future weeks here, I don't think this is super concerning. I think that the Packers had a really good plan up front. I thought that Rashawn Gary and company, they have a really good defensive line, and they are the number one team in the league against the pass. So they were going to make it hard on Josh Allen in this game. They had some different – the way they were bringing pressures and mixing in blitzes and running their games and their stunts, I think it really frustrated Allen at times. I shouldn't say frustrated. I think it kept him off balance a little bit. There were so many plays. There was 3 plays I think I remember. I'm going to go back and watch the game where he made an absolutely one of those insane throws with a guy like right in his face mask. And you can make plays and you can get your confidence level up and continue to make them. But it doesn't mean that like at any given moment is it going to start to go the other way. And then you have to kind of deal with that part of it. And I think as things kind of deteriorated in the second half, had a couple turnovers, that's just what it was. And they wanted to keep being aggressive. But I think this might be, tucked away in this game might be a really nice lesson for them in a game where they win and they won and they controlled it the whole time. Is like, okay, we have to now self-scout, self-regulate when we are in these moments where, because teams are going to do this. Sean McDermott mentioned it. They're going to try to poke and prod now the big Super Bowl favorite. They're going to try to get in their head. And when that happens, the Bills have to kind of take a deep breath, a goose fraba, if you will. What movie?
No, I don't know.
Goose fraba. Dude, anger management?
Oh, I've seen it, but it's been years.
Get out.
Years.
Get out. That's terrible. I love Goose fraba, dude.
I feel like
Jack Nicholson?
Overrated. Adam Sandler, Jack Nicholson. I didn't like it that much. It's a whole nother discussion, apparently. But I was not.
Today, I told this man that he changed my life because I'd been eating Red Delicious apples egregiously for 2 decades. And you put me on a Honeycrisp, and I made the change. And then you just throw anger management under the bus. I'm emotionally hurt.
I'll give it a watch tomorrow.
All right. On Josh Allen.
On Josh Allen, you nailed it. In the first half, think about this, man. The passes that he made with pressure in his face, the ability to run away from pressure when it was coming at him. I want to say it was like a 3rd and 13. He ran for 16. And then shortly thereafter, he used his legs to move out of the pocket, get a defender to come up to him, and then tossed a 1-yard touchdown pass to Dawson Knox. So everything was working for him with his arm, with his legs in the first half. And then the second half, he tried to take off with his legs at one time, but the Packers were more ready for it. Instead of throwing the ball away, he took a sack where he just ran out of bounds, and it's a negative play. And he throws those interceptions, negative play. So adjustments on the Packers' part, But also maybe, Josh saying, well, this worked in the first half. It's going to keep working. But when teams throw those different wrinkles at you, eventually you're going to make a few mistakes here and there. So it's up to Josh Allen and this Bills offense to clean up those mistakes and make sure the mistakes don't result in turnovers or plays where you lose significant yards.
Mm-hmm. I want to get into this running game. We got some things to talk about on the defensive side of the ball for the Bills. At receiver, real quick, before we move too far on. Obviously, we talked about Stefon Diggs. It's a big day. I thought Isaiah McKenzie had a really nice bounce back day today. I tweeted about it. It wasn't anything crazy. Obviously, he had the touchdown run on the jet sweep, but it was also that that catch over the middle, a catch that he maybe didn't make a couple weeks ago against Kansas City that helped set them up in the red zone, and then eventually for the touchdown to go up 21 to 7 at the time. That's a big time play in the game, and I think the Bills do a really good job of this. McDermott does a really good job of this. Is like letting guys know when maybe they're not doing well, or they have a setback in a game, but giving them an opportunity to come back and then make it better. And I thought McKenzie did well for himself today.
Yeah, absolutely. And, credit to the Bills too, where I think early this year they were, I don't want to say to a fault, but they really wanted to fit him into that just pure slot receiver. He wasn't going to be returning kicks. He wasn't going to be doing anything else. He was going to be their number 3 receiver. And that was fine, but he had some ups and downs. And in this game, you brought back the gadget play. You brought back the jet sweep. It results in a touchdown. It keeps the defenses on their toes. He had some nice returns in this game. So they're letting him be that jack of all trades, that weapon of sorts. And I think that's a good thing for him. They're confidence boosters. They help him get better. And then, if you do want to turn him into more of that traditional slot guy again later this year, maybe that is the best course of action, but it wasn't working for the past few weeks. So what do? You unlock him and let him use that speed, let him use that ability that he has used in previous years when the Bills had other guys in the slot and other weapons, and it allowed him to make plays on the field.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to let you guys watch this clip. I uploaded it here from Jaire Alexander. I went in the locker room. Obviously, we talked about their exchange during the game, and then this is what he had to say about it.
The tunnel with you and Stefon Diggs. What happened in the tunnel before the game when you guys yelling at each other going on the field?
Man, I was just keeping it real with him. Told him he couldn't mess with me. He a little boy. So that's all that was. Just being honest, you feel me? That's all I can do.
He said he didn't know who started it, but he said he finished it. What's your reaction?
I don't know what he mean by that. I need more clarification.
Do you know who started it?
No. I don't either. I finished it.
How do you feel about your matchups with him dating back to your days with Minnesota? How would you characterize them?
I mean, I always thought he was a decent receiver. But, I don't really got much else to say about him.
When you look at your team,
Kind of an odd exchange there. It's like, first of all, your defense, while it made some plays in the second half, don't get me wrong, were pretty much clowned in that first half. I mean, this was a team that was giving up around 18 points a game, or they were scoring 18 points a game. I got to go back and look at what they were giving up. But the Bills made it look easy in the first half, and I thought that they were able to move the ball offensively. Then in the second half, they started making some plays. But you talk about Stefon Diggs, number one, you didn't travel with him. Number two, he ends up coming in here having 100 and a touchdown. And number three, calling him a decent receiver. Ryan, he now leads the NFL in touchdown pass receptions at 7. He's second in the NFL only behind Tyreek Hill, who's on pace to have like 2,000 yards this season. Stefon Diggs is, I know he likes to say that he's him, whatever that means, because I feel like everybody's calling themselves him these days. But Stefon Diggs is Stefon Diggs. And I think there's obviously a little bit of heat that exists between these two guys that goes back to when Stefon Diggs was playing them twice a year.
Yeah, clearly when he called him a decent receiver and, a little boy, and odd comments. Like you said, they weren't matched up very much today, but at the end of the game, Diggs is the one that had over 100 yards. Diggs is the one that scored a touchdown, and Diggs was on the winning side of things. So like you said, odd exchange, both of them saying that they ended it, and Alexander saying he needed more clarification on what Diggs meant by that. But winning the game is ending it. Having the last laugh, that is essentially ending it, because you don't see the Packers very often in the regular season when you're in the AFC like he did when he was in Minnesota 2 times a year. And the way the Packers are playing right now, you're not likely for them to meet each other in the Super Bowl either if the Bills are able to get there. So I think Diggs is pretty much saying, I've closed the book on this rivalry, on this feud. There was some chirping pregame. I came out on top, and there's really no arguing that.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to see each other in the Super Bowl.
No.
This year. It's going to be a long slog. And as you see Aaron Rodgers on the other side of the sidelines, late in the fourth quarter, laughing and smiling and joking with teammates. And I mean, I guess when it's this bad, I guess you got to laugh to keep from crying. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
So I guess I get it from that perspective. But, it's just something where these are going to be really fun matchups week in and week out with Stefon Diggs. And I think the more that we see, the more success he has, this Bills offense has, the more you're going to see teams try to do this. I was going for a transition there, but I wanted to talk about something else. I really dropped the ball. Listen, I know you tune in most of the time. The main reason is for the transitions, and I didn't deliver in that spot.
Well,
but you know what?
2:30 in the morning.
It's 2:30 in the morning, and sometimes you just got to read it. So I apologize. Tis the season to save on groceries and all of your holiday gifts. Christmas bonus is underway at Tops Friendly Market. Shop at Tops and save $10 at all of your other favorite stores and restaurants. With over 25 gift cards to choose from, there's something for everyone on your list. And don't forget to treat yourself to some extra savings too. Save on great gifts like toys and games from GameStop or Toys R Us at Macy's. Great family dining at Applebee's or Buffalo Wild Wings. That new big screen TV you want from Best Buy, and so much more just by shopping at Tops. Be Santa's biggest little helper with Christmas bonus from Tops. For a complete list of available gift cards savings, visit topsmarkets.com/Christmas bonus. And Ryan, what is this Toys R Us at Macy's? I didn't know that was happening.
Oh yeah, they've got their own little space in all the Macy's stores. There's a few different states that have their own Toys R Us stores, but mostly now I believe they're affiliated just with Macy's and have their own little department in there.
Interesting. A couple more things I want to cover before we get out of here, and we'll have a couple shows for you guys this week coming up as we get ready for the Bills at the Jets in New Jersey on Sunday. But let's talk about this running game for the Bills. Devin Singletary comes out. He puts up, I think, 50 yards on the one drive, ends up with 14 carries for 67 yards. First with Singletary, I really liked the usage of Singletary. Like Zach Moss was active. I thought it was a waste of a roster spot. I think they could have given the jersey to somebody else. He doesn't end up touching it doesn't look like he had a snap in the game.
Right.
So I like that they were going heavy Devin Singletary. But what they found at the same time was a nice mix with James Cook, who ends up with 1 catch for 41 yards, which is where you want to see his impact in the passing game. And then 5 carries, 35 yards, 7 yards per carry. The only person that averaged more per rush for the Bills in this game was Josh Allen.
Yeah, I was real encouraged with the run game today. And in the second half, too, they faced some issues early on. I thought at the very end, though, they once again had some good runs. But Singletary, first and foremost, I don't know how much he puts into the reports and the rumors that are out there that the Bills called about Christian McCaffrey, that they called about Alvin Kamara. But I feel like when he's been given a set workload, he's fared very well in terms of how he's run the ball, how effective he's been yards per carry. And this was another example of that. I think he runs with really good confidence and vision, and he makes the most of the lanes that the offensive line is creating for him. James Cook, I feel like it's been night and day from the beginning of the year to now, and you're just scratching the surface on what he can do. We still haven't had that moment where you're like, man, this is the James Cook game. But a 41-yard reception, that's huge for him. That's the wheelhouse. He was the best pass catching back in this year's draft. That was what all the analysts were saying. And then averaging, like you said, about 5 yards, 7 yards,
7 yards,
5 for 35 on the ground. That's encouraging too, because he has that speed, that extra gear that Singletary doesn't have. So it's a good mix there in terms of how their skill sets complement one another. So getting them about 20 carries total in one game, I think that's the sweet spot. That's what you want to see because you need to be able to lean on the run in certain situations, and that's exactly what they did tonight.
Yeah, and for the thing for Brandon Beane, if you're sitting here looking to try to make a trade for a running back, I get the interest in Christian McCaffrey. I get, even if you reached out like Jay Glazer reported, asking about Alvin Kamara. I get all the thought process in, okay, let's make a call. Let's see what it would cost, because adding that to the mix is those kinds of players you add and then figure out the details later, right? You're in the Super Bowl window. You're trying to add as much talent. It's why I think that they're going to eventually end up signing Odell Beckham Jr., who cannot keep the Bills' name out of his mouth. Tweeted during the game again. I think every time the Bills play on primetime, OBJ is tuning in and thinking about what he looked like in blue, red, and white. So, but with the running backs, in the end, I think unless you can get some kind of steal, if you're Brandon Beane, you probably are going to end up being gun shy because you just spent a second-round draft pick, that draft capital, that it was just the starting point for Christian McCaffrey, in addition to all those other picks that they had to send to the Carolina Panthers. You're going to cost at least that for Kamara, and I think Kamara is probably going to yield a 1 if he ends up going to some team. Who knows? I mean, it's a running back at the end of the day. But you just spent a second-round pick, and I think what we've seen now at this point is enough from James Cook to say there is upside there. We have to continue to, nourish this part of our offense, the run game, and give James Cook more opportunities, because when they've given him opportunities, I know he had a couple of mistakes early on, but how can you really – the thing that's kind of irritated me about the Cook conversation is, like, how can you bang on a guy for having mistakes when we're talking about a sample size of like less than 10 touches?
Right.
That was the thing that kind of just always stood out to me, that bothered me a little bit.
Yeah, because early in the season, they were trying to get all three of the backs mixed in, including Zach Moss. And when you try to get three guys going, it's hard to get any of them going. So it's understandable they didn't do much with that sample size, but he's been getting better and better. And I don't fault Brandon Beane if he is calling around other teams and asking about their star players. That's what a good GM does. And maybe you find a team that's selling one of those players for pennies on the dollar. And if that's the case, sure, by all means. But I think the Bills have other needs. I think safety is something we could talk about in terms of being a potential need based on Jordan Poyer's injury, already missing Micah Hyde. Running back's not one of them right now. No, they don't have that superstar X factor like a Christian McCaffrey, who threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown. I think maybe even caught one today, doing a little bit of everything. But they have a pretty good running back room. And Odell Beckham Jr. can be that impact player on the offensive side of the ball if he does eventually sign here. But I think if the Bills make a move, it might be on the defensive side of the ball.
Let's get into the Poyer situation, because obviously – he's got to be frustrated right now. Sure. And it all of a sudden puts the Bills in a bit of a bind, because I think, listen, they like DeMar Hamlin. We like him a lot. And I thought early on in this game was playing like an absolute guy. Mm-hmm. Although I got a little bit of a, rebuff, rebuke or something on the press row. But I just mean, when I say that, I mean, he's a guy that I think the Bills can count on.
Sure.
Right. And so he came in, he made some plays. He's really physical. He doesn't mind tackling, which I think was supposed to be Jaquan Johnson's strong suit. Yeah. Hamlin was supposed to be more of the athletic profile, coverage ability. And I think he could do that too. Obviously, that was a tough beat on the ball. He took a bad angle, couldn't respond in times. And then I think it was, I don't even remember. Do you remember this guy's name? What is his name? The receiver.
Yeah.
I want to look it up right now. It's Torre. I don't even remember his first name. Torre. It was a really nice play. One catch, 37 yards, beats you for a touchdown. All right, it's going to happen. He's played really well, DeMar Hamlin, but these are still two inexperienced players at the safety positions. I think it's going to be about, all right, what are the available options out there? You mentioned Kareem Jackson from the Denver Broncos. That could be one of them. I really do think that if the price is right, maybe you pull the move there. Just even if it's a depth guy that you want to come in and have available in case one of those guys isn't working out.
Yeah, it's important to see who's available around the league. I think there's going to be safeties on a lot of these teams right now that are looking and saying, this is definitely a rebuilding team. We're not where we need to be. This guy's on an expiring contract, or he has 1 year left, and that would be even more attractive to the Bills. Maybe if you could bring him in for an extra year because one of these veteran, Poyer's in a contract year and he's dealing with these injuries. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, Jackson was one name because he has experience with Buffalo's defensive backs coach. I think he plays very well. He has that versatility. He can play both safety spots. He can still even play a little bit of cornerback if you needed him to. So someone to keep an eye on, but I think there's also other safeties that the Bills are going to be checking in on as the deadline approaches.
And if you watch the London game today, he absolutely blew up. I think it was Travis Etienne on one play. It was like, wow, dude. It was like the dude has a hit stick on him, and I think that's something that, obviously Sean McDermott will like. From a defensive perspective, we got to do a couple of things. I want to talk about the defensive line, probably the linebackers as well. But we also got to hand out our value Toolsy player of the game. Head over to Value Home Centers right now. They will have you hooked up, getting ready to kind of, do some winter projects around the house. They have deals on everything. Check out their ad, valuehomecenters.com. We're going to hand out our value Toolsy player of the game. You're going to start us off. What do you got for us?
I've got Tim Settle. I thought Settle really stepped up for the Bills tonight. I know that the backs rushed very well, but Tim Settle made two big impact plays. He had a sack on Aaron Rodgers, and on the interception made by Matt Milano, it was Tim Settle that got his hand on the ball to knock that up into the air to create that opportunity. So if you can't get to the quarterback, get your arms up and maybe something good can happen. And sure enough, it did for Tim Settle. So post-game, Von Miller talked about how happy he was. He actually said that Tim Settle kind of spoke into the universe, so to speak. He said, Settle said earlier this week, I'm going to get a sack this week. I'm going to make this big play. And he actually ends up making two for this team. So he's my Toolsy player of the game. What about you, Matt?
I like it. I'm going to stay on the defensive line. I'm going to hand it out to Greg Rousseau, who I thought was really disruptive today. And that's what they drafted him to be. Like in a game where Von Miller, you look at his stat line, he had a couple of tackles, one quarterback hit, no sacks. It was Greg Rousseau who I thought really had an impact. And a lot of that comes from the fact that teams have to pay a lot of attention to Von Miller. Sure. But look at Rousseau's stat line here. 4 tackles. He had 1 sack. He could have had 2.
One was negated by
the penalty. And then he had 2 quarterback hits and 1 tackle for a loss. So everything that you kind of look for him to give you from a defensive line perspective, he's really delivering. And I think his production so far has kind of quelled some of the maybe frustration or exacerbation of the lack of production from AJ Epinesa and Boogie Basham. And I'm not saying they're necessarily playing poorly. I'm not watching it closely enough, but they're not flashing enough to me. Every once in a while, I'll see a really good pass rush rep from AJ Epinesa, and I'll be like, wow, that's the guy we saw in the summer. But it just hasn't been consistently enough. And I think what you're getting out of Rousseau, your first-round draft pick last year, that's got to be really, it's the Bills have to feel really good about how they developed him.
Yeah. When he came in last year, you saw him flash at times, but it was the consistency part. I feel like he's been one of the most consistent players on the defense side of the ball. First few weeks of the season, he had at least half of a sack or an entire sack. He's won a few games without one, but then tonight he gets a sack. He should have had a second one that was negated by a penalty. He's making consistent plays. He's been really good in the run game in terms of run defense. He can do it all, man. That wingspan is going to help him bat some passes each year. It's going to help him maybe create those interceptions. So the Bills should feel really good about where he is at this point in his career. And it goes back to what I was saying when I was talking about James Cook. They haven't scratched the surface on this guy yet either. That skill set, those intangibles, the talent, you can't teach a lot of that. The size, he's still growing into his body. He's still learning that pass rush arsenal, but you're seeing more and more of him in terms of the production from year 1 to year 2.
The Bills 6-1 start, first time since 1993. The Bills put out that stat today. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, this is a team that the exciting part about all of this, I think from a fan's perspective, is they're dealing with the expectations. They're winning, and they're winning in impressive fashion each way. They're finding different ways to win in impressive fashion. Like you go in a game like this against the Green Bay Packers, who obviously, there you go, got John Warrow out there, 3 dubs, trying to jam IPAs down
That's
our face.
right.
The Bills give us these IPAs after every game. I think mostly after wins. I don't think they're passing out the beers after a loss. But they're winning in really impressive ways, and there's a lot of things that we could talk about, like we mentioned in the headline. Like, are some of the things that maybe happened in this game concerning? I don't necessarily think they are, because I think they're learning how to win depending on what deficiencies pop up week to week.
Yeah, if there's something to worry about, it might be injuries and how they can take a toll on you, like the Poyer conversation. But you mentioned they're 6-1, Matt. All offseason, all summer. What was the toughest stretch of the season on paper? Here. It's over.
It's over.
From week 1 to the first week after the bye, you had the last 3 MVPs in Mahomes, in Rodgers, in Lamar Jackson. Mm-hmm. And they've defeated all 3 of those players. Not Allen. I know the stat about a quarterback to defeat the last 3 MVPs. It doesn't happen. The Bills as a whole have beaten the last 3 MVPs. They've beaten some great teams along the way here. They looked the part in the opening game against the Rams. And while some of these teams that they've beaten have kind of been on a little bit of a downward spiral, other teams have bounced back. Like the Titans, when they beat the Titans and they put that beat down on them, I said, holy cow, this team's not going to be very good. And now they're kind of rolling along. They're looking like a quality team. They're looking like the team that was considered a contender last year. So the Bills have done their part through this part of the season. Obviously, now there's still going to be some very tough matchups remaining, but I don't see how you're not encouraged at this point of the year.
We saw from our good friend Mookie Hawkins over at Wufo Sports that Jake Kumaro and Aaron Rodgers got that brosif post-game pick together.
That's right.
That was important.
Oh, absolutely. Rodgers loves to mention Kumaro at any turn, so the fact that they get to meet up after the game, I'm sure made him happy. I was kind of anticipating at least one throw to the end zone to Kumaro when the Bills got deep. But it just didn't really happen tonight. Kumaro, though, a very valuable asset on special teams. Mookie joked that maybe Rodgers would like to have him back. I don't know if the Packers are going to be burning the phone lines trying to get Kumaro back on Green Bay, but stranger things have happened.
Nice player. I like a lot of what Jake Kumaro does, but I don't think he's fixing the problems in that Green Bay offense. Before we get out of here, let's have a quick conversation about the linebackers, because I think a lot of people were, number one, clamoring for the Bills to send out a third linebacker, and try to deal with the pass a little bit differently. I think we got to stamp that out, because we've learned at this point that they are their base is their nickel. Yeah. Taron Johnson is going to be on the field no matter what. And then there also seemed like I took the temperature of Bills Mafia on social media in that third and fourth quarter, and there's frustration with Tremaine Edmonds. Obviously, Matt Milano's playing lights out. I mean, all pro caliber season. I don't think Tremaine Edmonds was as bad today as I think a lot of people did. I think that when you're in the middle and you have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon running straight downhill at you in the middle, there's going to be plays where you'd wish he's get to the ball quicker. You'd be a little bit more physical, but they're asking him to do a lot. They're asking him to play sideline to sideline. They're asking him to play against a short passing game where Aaron Rodgers has to keep, operate in that short to intermediate area. And, oh, by the way, deal with those two absolute bulls.
Yeah, so Edmonds, I feel like, has taken the brunt of a lot of the Bills fans' frustrations throughout his career. And I feel like this year there's been more good games than bad. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the good games he's had this season, you compare it to what he did tonight. And I'm not saying tonight was a bad game, but it wasn't as good as some of those other performances. So right. I think anytime that he has a letdown of a game, whatever you want to call it, the fans are going to go right back to that. Oh, how can you re-sign this guy? How can you bring him back? There's a reason why a lot of coaches around this league specifically mention Edmonds by name, because of what he can do, because of maybe some of the things that you don't see. And yes, he led the team in tackles with 16 total tackles tonight. He did miss some plays. He was maybe out of position here or there. But like you said, they're asking him to do a lot, Matt. And when you're comparing him to game by game, it's not necessarily fair to the player. As for Milano, again, interception. He probably could have had another one in this game. Up in the press box, it was hard to tell that one ball hit the turf. We were surprised that it wasn't reviewed up here, but I had a lot of fans chiming in that on the TV view, they slowed it down significantly to see that it hit the turf. But he's making plays for this team. And McDermott in the post-game presser said, listen, you guys are writing about him a lot more this year, but I've seen that same player the last few seasons. So it might just be the ball's bouncing to him this year, where in previous years, maybe he wasn't in that spot where those interceptable balls were. But kudos to him, because it feels like each week he's making some kind of impact play, whether it's in the run game, interceptions, tackles for loss. He's doing it all this year.
Mm-hmm. I don't want you to intercept this message. I want you to take it, catch it in stride, and head over to Tops Friendly Markets right now and make sure you check out their carryout cafe, because it is elite. I mean, they have deals on deals on deals, Ryan Talbot. Check this out. Tops is perfect for game day or any day. Hot to go, fresh, large cheese and pepperoni pizza.
Oof.
How much?
You tell me. I'm waiting.
Come on, dude.
I'm waiting for the breakfast pizza. I'm waiting for the breakfast pizza.
Dude, I'm quizzing you. Hot to go, fresh, large cheese and pepperoni pizza.
I'm always thinking about the breakfast pizza that's $20, Matt Parrino. Always thinking about it. I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like, it's like almost 3 a.m. I could go for a slice of breakfast pizza. How much is their hot to go pizza?
$14.
14. I was going to guess 6.
Jumbo chicken wings, 10 count.
12.
$14.
My gosh, I'm terrible at this. I can't be on.
Pizza and taco log, 6 count.
No.
$7.69. You got the $5.99 a pound baby back rib section, subs, sandwiches, wraps, apps, sides, and so much more. Visit topsmarkets.com/redzone for the complete menu of ready-to-enjoy fan favorites. Listen, by the time we get out of here, we might be heading over to Tops to get a breakfast pizza on the way home.
Fresh pizza.
Oh, if they're open, we might have to stop over at the Carryout Cafe. Might be a little bit too late for that.
Who are these weirdos walking in at 3 a.m.? That's what they're going to be thinking.
All right, he's Ryan Talbot. He's going to drive back to Ole in New York. I am Matt Parrino. I'm going to go home and go to sleep because I got to get in my Jack Skellington costume.
Oof.
My daughter's being Sally. We're gonna get after it tomorrow. I got to go to a parade in the morning, and then we're obviously going to go trick or treating at night. Are you going to dress up?
I don't know. Neither of my kids needed me to dress up or wanted me to dress up this year. So,
I understand.
son is going to be a NASA astronaut. He has the whole gear. My daughter is going to be a surfer boy delivery girl. So a little Stranger Things vibe for the fans out there.
Love it. Enjoy. There's no weekend left. Apologies, but you get to celebrate a Buffalo Bills win, and we'll be right back at you next week with much, much more. Take care, everybody.